All right, the mic is open. Chad, you can unmute everybody, and everyone here knows everyone else pretty much. So I especially want to say hi, Rick Melcher.
Where's Rick?
Hi, Paula. Hi, Steve. Hi, everybody.
Oh, hi, Rick.
Everybody.
And Peter Coy. Hi, Peter Coy.
Hi, Paula. Thanks for doing this. Hi, Steve.
Peter.
Well, Peter, how are you? God,
Good.
this is a reunion.
Peter,
Sure is.
Peter is one of the few people who I knew at Business Week back in the 1980s and is still with Business Week now at Bloomberg.
Yep.
Peter and Jim Ellis.
That's right.
Are you the last?
Jim going strong after more than 40 years.
It's amazing.
Yep.
It's amazing. How many of you are still there at Bloomberg Business Week?
Well, Christina Lindblad,
That's right.
Mark Miller on the copy desk.
Wow.
Ilsa Walton is still around.
That's right.
Yeah, it's
Ilsa
there are a
may
few
even be on the
others.
call.
Yeah. But it's a small group, but
Not a lot.
yeah. Trying to carry the torch.
Well, good. You know, the new business model in a way is sort of philanthropy. If you think of, Mike Bloomberg taking over Business Week when it would have otherwise failed. If you think of Jeff Bezos taking over the Washington Post and investing in it, if you look what's happening at the LA Times, there's it's a philanthropic model for
Right. Sometimes I joke the only problem with journalism is that there aren't enough rich white guys to go around for all of the failing newspapers.
Steve,
So,
I'm curious.
Yeah,
Can I ask Steve a question?
sure.
Hi, Steve.
Hi, Connie. How are you?
I'm good. It's so good to see you.
You too.
I am going to ask a question that because I am currently working for a nonprofit in Connecticut called AmeriCares, and I just wonder what you think after your background made you become such a good leader, because you were obviously something, and it's a hard question to answer, I know, but you were a great leader, not only to the editorial staff, but all the people on the business side thought the same thing.
I
Wow.
agree.
Thank you. Thank you. It is a very hard question to answer. I guess part of it was just growing up in my family and learning to listen and learning to understand both sides of the story. I just somehow realized at an early age that I had more to learn by listening than by talking. And I learned to be a good listener, and that's maybe why I became a journalist. And then managing wasn't so different. You got to understand what people are about and what motivates them and what complaints they may have that are legitimate. Journalists are very good at griping, but sometimes their gripes are valid. And so I think if I had to pick one thing, I would say being a good listener helps you develop the skills to become a good leader. And, if you don't surround yourself with good people, you're going to fail. And I think I was always quite willing to find the brightest people and hire them and not be threatened by them. And if you don't do that, you're going to have real problems. So the staff of Business Week and Newsweek and even the Saturday Review, when I was the editor of that for a little while, and certainly at CUNY, the people that were at these places were really very, very good people. And it just was a pleasure to work with them. And I've heard of situations where that's not true. So I can imagine what the alternative is like.
Steve, when you're talking about leadership, if you were running Business Week now, how would you be covering this whole story about the Georgia legislature and the CEO's belated responses?
Well, I don't know how Business Week has been doing in the last week or two because I haven't been looking, but I think CEOs are playing much more of a role now than they did before in political issues. And I think that's a good thing, even though it's fraught with dangers. We don't want our corporations to become overly politicized. But when you see, things that are fundamentally wrong, as we saw during the Trump administration, they're right to speak out, and voting rights is so fundamental to what this country is about that they're right to speak out and try to influence things. I'm not saying that they should pull out, Coca-Cola should leave Atlanta because Georgia might suppress voting rights in some way. I don't know. I think that they would do better staying and trying to influence the outcome. So I don't know that I have any magic formula for covering it other than to just be journalistically rigorous and know that you have a stake in the outcome, and therefore you should speak up more.
I'd like to ask a question, Steve. As a Midwesterner, my father owned an electrical contracting company, and it was a union company, and he had apprentices and everything. And so I'm not by birth an East Coaster, and I personally wonder about the role of private equity and how they've changed the relationship between the companies and their community. And instead of investing in the community, leverage it, take all the money for yourself, then say, oh, we have to meet some goals and fire everybody. For the last several years, I have just thought that private equity has been part of the problem that created the whole Trumpism, because people that I grew up with don't have the middle class lifestyle they used to have, because all the profits left the community. And so I just wonder if, and I don't see many stories about this in the business press or anywhere.
Yeah, well, in terms of the media, you're talking, I think, about Alden Capital and buying up a lot of newspapers and then laying off a lot of people and cutting costs because they think that's the only way to save the newspapers. And now we're seeing a backlash to that in the case of the Chicago Tribune Company, which is being split up. And there are new bidders have sprung up in opposition to Alden Capital because they want to provide local ownership for a lot of the papers that are part of the Tribune Company, including the Chicago Tribune itself. And I think that's a very hopeful sign. Yes, I'm not a fan of Alden Capital and what they've been doing to journalism, but it takes something to beat something else. And we're starting to see people, local owners for the most part, stepping up to save local journalism. Otherwise, it's not going to happen because the business model of traditional newspapers just isn't sustainable anymore. So we have to have people step up and take it on. But this is not a new phenomenon. Getting back to the trust in the media, this goes back to the 1970s. The decline of trust in the media is longstanding. It predates Donald Trump by a long time. He did not create this problem. He exacerbated it. He enabled it. But he didn't create this problem.
I was actually thinking more about other businesses, industry, just companies in general, not just media companies. But thank you for your answer.
Yeah. I'm no longer the editor of BusinessWeek, so I don't know much about these non-media companies.
Hi, this is Rose Brady. Steve, I was wondering, I haven't read your book yet, but I was wondering what you have to say about coverage of international affairs. It's very limited now in most local newspapers. There's nothing in my local newspaper, for example, in Naples, Florida. Just wondering what you think about that.
Yeah, it's a good point, Rose. I must say I did not cover that particular angle in any depth. I was so concerned about the problems right here at home in the US but you're right, there's, except for a few newspapers, there's much less international coverage. But, as long as the AP is around doing it, as the New York Times Syndicate is doing it, and other international organizations, that gets picked up and syndicated, and the bigger stories do appear. And, with the good thing about the internet is you can go get anything you want now. You don't have to wait for a story about Hungary or Romania or Poland to be in the New York Times anymore. If you're interested, there are plenty of places you can go to get a whole lot of international coverage and find out what's going on. There are just a lot of opportunity for people to experience journalism that didn't exist years ago.
Yeah, I agree. I just think that people who are don't have the initiative to do that never know what's going on in the rest of the world. But I agree. Thanks, Steve, and great to see you
Great
and
to see
everybody
you.
else.
Okay, I think we've used up all of Steve's time. And I want to thank you so much, Steve. It was wonderful to see you. It was wonderful to hear your philosophical musings on journalism, your family, your faith, your growing up in the Bronx. It was all good. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you,
Paula.
everybody, for joining us. on
Patty,
a
and thanks to OPC
Thursday
for
night.
doing this, and great to see you all. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.